Hi everybody, it's Dr. Armagan again today. Just replying back to your discussion board. I've had a really great time reading about your experiences and reading about your questions. And I can't respond to everybody one at a time, so I thought I'd address some of the most prevalent questions via video, which is how I think we're gonna move forward for the rest of this discussion board. So one of the questions I got was, how and why do viruses mutate? Because I mentioned in our first video that a mutation is the reason why that protein on the outside of the coronavirus or the COVID-19 virus was able to change that protein on the outside of it and allow it to adhere to a human host cell and cause it to be infected. First thing, we have to define what a mutation is. And a mutation is a change in the genome, a change in the genetic sequence. And what is a genome? What is a change? A genome is just the entire, all the DNA or all the RNA in that particular virus or bacteria or human cell, whatever it is that we're talking about. The genome is all of the instructions that's going to allow that virus to do what it does, okay? So I'm going to use this analogy. A genome is like a textbook. It has all of the information that that virus is going to need, whether it's a DNA genome or an RNA genome. It's just the code, the message, right? The message is a sequence, right? And a mutation is a change in that sequence, a change in that message. And what is it going to change eventually? Well, if the instructions are going to be changed, right, the genome is going to be changed, then what happens after is going to be changed, and that is the generation of a protein. So there was a change in a gene in the RNA of the COVID virus, and that change allowed the protein to change and be altered, and that was what caused it to be able to bind to a new host cell and infect humans. Okay, so the genome is like a textbook of instructions, and it's organized, the genome is organized into genes. The genes would be like chapters of a textbook, and each chapter or each gene codes for a specific protein, right? So you can have a change in the sequence, which is a mutation that will then alter a specific protein. In this case of the COVID-19, it would be a change in the protein on the outside of the virus that allows it to bind to a different host. In our case, it was the cilia cells and the respiratory tract. I also mentioned that RNA genomes have more mutations than DNA genomes. So think about our textbook again. Every time that textbook or that genome is copied, there is some kind of error rate. If I copy a textbook and you copy a textbook and someone else copies that textbook, we can all have mistakes in the textbook. That's what a mutation is, mistakes in the instructions, right? RNA genomes do not have proofreading activity like DNA genomes. So that's why you have higher rates of mutation in RNA genomes. And I said examples of many viruses that affect humans are RNA genomes like influenza, HIV, MERS, SARS, Zika, and COVID-19. And mutations can be a really scary word, but the truth is that some mutations don't cause any change at all. It's just a change in the sequence, and the virus doesn't do anything, doesn't behave differently. Proteins are not changed. Sometimes the mutations can be good, sometimes they can be bad, and over time, mutations that are beneficial to that virus are going to accumulate because of natural selection. We can talk about what that means. So what causes mutations? Well, scientists can generate mutations in the lab very easily, and that's a different exciting conversation as well, another video. Mutations can be caused by UV rays, radiation, but in this case, the mutation was spontaneous, just naturally occurring in nature, and that's very common. It's a natural part of the viral life cycle. Actually, mutations happen in all organisms. Plants have mutations, people have mutations, Animals have mutations, and sometimes those mutations can be good. Sometimes they can be bad, like causing cancer, and sometimes it causes a change. We have differences in, eye color, just different mutations, changes in the sequence. So it shouldn't be a scary word, but there are just changes in the sequence or the code of that genome, of the instructions that are instructing for proteins and cellular processes. So every time a virus infects a host cell, it's going to insert its genome into that host cell, and new RNA genomes are going to be made using that host cell machinery. What does that mean? It means that the virus doesn't have the organelles necessary to copy its genome, so it has to use a host cell. But because there's no proofreading activity, the viral genome can accumulate mutations. There's a chance of accumulating mutations every time you copy that virus, like every time you copy the textbook. Mistakes can happen. So every time the virus infects the host cell, and that host cell makes more viruses, and that host cell explodes, releasing more viruses into that host, and that host sneezes or coughs and infects other hosts, you have the possibility of a mistake in the genome. And that can be a bad mistake, a good mistake, no mistake, right? So that mutation can be anything. So typically you have to have multiple genes to be mutated to cause a virus to become more severe or more easily transmittable. So multiple genes would have to mutate. And despite these high mutation rates among viruses in general, it's unusual to find viruses that are going to change their mode of transmission between humans over a short time scale, right? So what does this mean for the development of a possible vaccine? Even though there's lots of mutations that have the possibility of happening, they're still pretty genetically similar enough that these mutations shouldn't alter the development of a new vaccine. And the good thing about mutations is that it helps scientists track how a virus is behaving. Right? So it's not all bad news, and we shouldn't think of mutations as a scary word. We can learn some things about mutations, but understanding them is also important. So anyway, we'll talk more about vaccines and what makes some viruses more pathogenic, more contagious than others. So that's something else. Some of the other questions that you all had. All right, so take care, be safe, be socially distant. Bye.